After seeing Final Destination Bloodlines, I never want to see another Penny again, and I now have like 50 new irrational fears. But this movie still gave me everything I wanted and a little bit more, so let's talk about it. But as always, before we get started, if you're new here, my name is Aaron, and I talk all things movies and TV, but really mostly movies, so if you're into that sort of thing, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me. It would be greatly appreciated. And while you're at it, if you like my videos, go ahead and hit that like button while you're at it as well. And if you've already seen the movie, let me know your thoughts on it down below in the comments, and also new irrational fears that you have because of this film. But without further ado, let's talk about Final Destination Bloodlines. So this movie is the 6th installment in the Final Destination franchise, and the only one I haven't seen is the 5th one. I've seen 1 through 4. So out of the movies that I've seen in this franchise outside of that 5th one, this right now is my favorite one. And in this movie, we follow a young girl who is having dreams of her grandmother's premonition. And since her grandmother was able to cheat Death and is still alive, Death is now hunting down her and her family because they aren't supposed to exist. Jumping right into the good, and the first thing I have here is that, well, you can't talk about a Final Destination film without talking about the kills, because that's kind of the whole point of these movies. And in the 6th installment of this franchise, they are still able to get really creative with all of these kills, and that premonition in the beginning and really the whole opening of this film was awesome and is some of the most fun I had watching a Final Destination film. These kills, as expected, were bloody, gory, over the top, in just the best way possible. And as I said before, I walked out of this theater with new irrational fears, especially Pennies. And if you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I am talking about, because there is a Penny in this movie that is straight up a mass murderer. There are also plenty of little Easter eggs and callbacks to previous films and kills that I enjoyed, especially the last kill in this film. It calls back to a pretty popular premonition, and if you've ever heard of Final Destination, then you probably know exactly what premonition I'm talking about. It's the one that scarred a whole generation of millennials. And the last kill in this movie pays tribute to that perfectly. Now, I don't want to spoil how all the deaths happen in this, so let's just say they got really creative with all of these kills, and they used lots of different objects to do so. So if you came to this movie to see the kills, which, let's be honest, you probably did, you are going to get everything you want out of this movie. And next up for the good, and this is the thing that I think sets this movie apart from the other Final Destination movies, and that is the story. They actually had a pretty interesting plot behind everything that was going on. The concept of Death coming after the descendants of someone who cheated Death because they are not supposed to exist was a nice little wrinkle in what this franchise usually does, and made things feel a little bit fresh in this movie. The lore on how Death works remained the same, but it also felt like they expanded on the history of this world, which made this world feel bigger than it ever has before. And this story also took some unexpected turns that I enjoyed, and it put more of a focus on the characters, and they did just enough to actually make you kind of care about what happens to them. And the cast really helped out with that, because they had great chemistry with one another, and that led to some pretty cool character moments that were pretty endearing at times as well, if I do say so myself. Caitlin Santahana, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but she was the lead in this movie, and I think she did a really good job. But I think the character that will emerge as the fan favorite from this movie is definitely Richard Harmon's character. He was hilarious and just absolutely stole the show every time he was on screen. But at its core, this is a movie about a family and their relationship with one another, and those relationships on top of the chemistry that this cast had honestly made some of these deaths kind of sad, even though they were still pretty hilarious at the same time. But anyways, unlike other films in this franchise, you don't just feel like you're sitting around waiting for the next kill to happen. There's actually a little bit of substance in between each kill that you can get invested in, and I really appreciated that. Plus, they do give a nice little send-off to Tony Todd as well. And finally, for the good is the humor. This was just straight up a funny film, and I laughed a lot more than I thought I would. A lot of the humor obviously does come from those absolutely absurd kills, but the characters themselves genuinely had funny moments as well, and again, I think that came from the great chemistry that this cast had with each other. It was a mix of slapstick and some really really dark humor. I mean, there was a joke in there about killing a baby that I couldn't help but laugh at because it was that funny, and it was just delivered in the perfect way. And it was moments like that where I just really found myself laughing a lot and just having an absolute blast with this film. Moving on to the so-so, and this is pretty much a given with Final Destination films, but if you're watching this and you've never heard of Final Destination and you've never seen a Final Destination movie, you are going to have to suspend your disbelief to the moon to enjoy this movie. And this isn't really a criticism of this movie, this is just a known fact of this Final Destination universe. Logic just doesn't exist with this movie. So again, if you're someone who is watching this and you've never ever seen a Final Destination movie and you have no clue what they're about, just be aware that you are just going to have to, again, throw that logic out the window, maybe turn off a section of your brain on how physics work and things like that, and just enjoy this time, because you are going to see people get killed in ways that you didn't even know was possible, and then proceed to walk out of this movie with like 100 new irrational fears because of this movie. And finally, getting into the bad, and the only thing I have here is that the third act was a little bit of a letdown in my opinion. It felt like throughout most of this film, they really took their time with the deaths to really build that suspense and almost kind of tease you in a way. But once we got to that third act, everything happened so quickly that it almost felt like they were just trying to rush to get to the ending. And that was just weird compared to the rest of the film, where they really did take their time with a lot of things that happened in this movie. They were kind of letting things breathe in this movie and staying with scenes a little bit longer. It didn't feel like they were worried about just jumping from kill to kill. They were worried about telling a good story, which is something I think they did. But then again, once we got to the third act, it seemed like telling a good story was no longer on the table, and they just wanted to get to the end of this thing as quickly as they possibly could. And honestly, I was having so much fun with this movie that I definitely would not have minded if they slowed down that third act a little bit to build up some more suspense during that moment so the ending wouldn't feel as rushed. But overall, this movie is a blast, and it gives you everything you want and a little bit more out of a Final Destination film. It's got the kills, the humor, and even a solid plot behind it. So if you are a Final Destination fan, then this movie is a must-see. Those are my thoughts on Final Destination Bloodlines. Be sure to let me know what you thought of the movie down in the comments, and as always, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, get your Eazy Apparel at shop easyapparel.com. God bless, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.